He calls himself a simple man. Europe calls him its last dictator. Alexander Lukashenko rose on an anti-corruption wave. He promised to clean house. He promised to break the old networks. Then he built his own. In 1994, Belarus chose a former collective farm boss. He spoke the language of the factory floor. He promised law and order. He promised stability in a stormy post-Soviet world. He delivered a system very familiar to the Soviet past. The state kept the levers, the state held the keys, and one man held the state. Constitutional changes tightened his grip. Courts were reshaped, parliament neutered, elections became rituals. The presidency became the sun around which all orbit. And with that gravity came money, rents, monopolies, favors. This is the story critics tell. This is the map investigators draw. A centralized economy, a centralized patronage, a president who says he owns nothing, a presidency that touches almost everything. Belarus kept most of its industry, factories, refineries, potash mines, telecoms, timber, sugar, alcohol, a Soviet inheritance, frozen in amber, but amber can be carved. At the heart sits an opaque machine, the presidential administration's business empire, a web of companies and directorates reporting up, not out. Hotels, sanatoria, farms, construction firms, retail chains, logistics hubs, all tucked under a single roof with a very special landlord. It runs like a state within the state. It earns, it spends, it avoids the spotlight. Its budgets are harder to trace. Its assets blur the line between public property and private privilege. He says the residences are the people's. He just uses them. But there are many residences, dachas tucked into forests, compounds behind walls, a lakeside estate for retreats and meetings, ice rinks where the president laces up at midnight, hunting lodges for the loyal, a motorcade always ready, jets and helicopters on standby, all technically state property, all at the disposal of one office. The real cash comes from the big pipes, oil, moving in and out. Belarus buys Russian crude on friendly terms, refines it, ships clean fuels to the West. The spread is a money gusher. At least it was for years. There were clever flourishes too. Investigators chronicled the solvents trick a decade ago. Rebrand refined products as something else. Avoid duties. Book the gains off budget. Moscow cried foul. The scheme closed, but the instinct remained. And then there is potash, white gold under Belarusian soil. Belaruskali is a crown jewel. It feeds the world's fields. It feeds the regime's coffers. Sanctions tried to choke it off. New routes appeared. Through Russia, through middlemen. Margins shrank. The tap kept dripping. Every system like this needs trusted hands. Belarus had its wallets, alleged by activists and flagged by sanctions. Men who prospered close to the throne. State contracts, tax breaks, monopolies. Construction magnates who built stadiums and palaces. Arms brokers turned holding company kings. Fuel and tobacco barons who won duty-free and distribution rights. When times were good, they expanded. When they fell from grace, the hand that fed could also seize. Arrests, asset transfers, a cautionary tale broadcast to every other loyalist. Family became part of the architecture. A son as security aide, another heading a presidential sports club. Not just a hobby, a network, sponsorships, tax perks, import exemptions. Investigative reporters mapped the flows. They traced how a sports brand could become a cash pipeline. Official denials met unofficial realities. Companies eager to support the boss's club rarely left empty-handed. Cigarettes tell another chapter. Legal factories in Grodno produced billions. Duty-free shops popped up at borders and airports. Then Europe found its streets awash with illicit smokes. Seizures spiked. Customs data didn't add up. Reports by cross-border investigators and Belarusian journalists pointed to a gray empire. Licenses granted to insiders, warehouses humming at night, cartons slipping from bonded zones into black markets. Profits huge, accountability scarce. The state said it fought smuggling. The numbers told a murkier tale. Timber moved too. Belarusian forests feed sawmills and exporters. a commodity with clean labels, an industry with plenty of corners to hide transfer pricing. Buy low at home, sell high abroad through a friendly intermediary. Pocket the spread away from prying eyes. Across the border, assets wore different masks. Sanatoria in EU resort towns, hotels flying a neutral flag, holding companies in quiet jurisdictions, Cyprus, the Baltics, the Caucasus, Dubai. Add a trusted nominee here, a shell company there. By the time the money lands, the trail is faint. Sanctions tried to flip on the lights. After the 2020 crackdown, the lists grew long. The president, his sons, his administrators, businessmen tagged as enablers. Their companies blacklisted, shipping lanes squeezed, banks told to look twice. The response was familiar. Restructure, rename, relocate. A cousin replaces a partner. A firm in Minsk becomes a firm in Moscow. The game resets. Lukashenko shrugs publicly. He jokes about tractors, not yachts. He says he sleeps on simple beds. He says he owns no shares, no villas, no bank accounts abroad. On paper, he's right. On paper, the presidency owns it all. But power is the ultimate asset. It unlocks compounds. It opens vaults. It moves resources with a phone call. It decides who eats and who starves. How much is he worth? No one can say with confidence. Estimates float. Billions, some whisper. What is certain is control. Control over the state's biggest earners. Control over who gets a license. Control over who keeps it. In systems like this, wealth is not a number. It is a network. A favor owed, a signature granted, a monopoly awarded, then withdrawn. A palace lit at dusk, paid for by a line item no auditor can quite trace. Look at the machinery built around him. Not just ministries, a separate realm inside the state. The Presidential Property Management Directorate. It runs farms, hotels, sanatoriums, shops, even factories. An empire within the republic. It earns, it spends, it answers upward, not outward. Critics call it a shadow budget, a parallel wallet for power. Funds move off the main books, they say. Projects bloom, residences rise, accounts balance where no public ledger reaches. Follow the money through the big pillars. Potash is one. Belaruskali is a crown jewel. Fertilizer the world needs. Contracts written in quiet rooms. Pricing set in hubs, far from miners' dust. For years, a joint trader balanced Belarus and Russia. Then the partnership split. An arrest followed. A Russian executive held in Minsk. A message sent. Supply is leverage. So are handcuffs. Oil is another pillar. Discounted crude flows in. Refineries at Mosir and Novopolotsk hum. Diesel and gasoline flow out. Margins hinge on duty breaks and timing. In one infamous twist, exports were rebranded, not as fuel, but as solvents and thinners. A customs loophole. Revenue without Russian duties. Moscow noticed. The windfall ended, but the lesson lingered. Ingenuity serves power when rules bend. Tobacco sits at the crossroads of policy and profit. A single state factory dominates production. Distribution is a gate. At times, that gate opens for a chosen partner. According to European sanctions notes, certain businessmen won exclusive rights. Preferential taxes, special zones, warehouses by the border. Cigarettes then appear across frontiers. Too many for official tallies. Smuggling becomes a recurring charge from neighbors. Minsk denies complicity, but the profits pile up for those who hold the keys. Names surface again and again in sanction lists and investigations. Trusted intermediaries. Wallets, Brussels calls some of them. Oil traders close to the center. Logistics barons with customs perks. Magnates who expand with state guarantees and state orders. When the wind shifts, they vanish or shrink. One tycoon, once touted as a favorite, fell to a tax case. His assets fractured. Another, branded a wallet, saw sanctions freeze his reach. A third ballooned overnight with monopoly grants. Rise, reward, removal, all downstream from loyalty. Over it all stands that management directorate. It is more than properties. It is a command post. It allocates dachas, hunters' lodges, spas by pine forests. A private hockey rink can become a public asset with a signature, or the reverse. Staff paychecks are public. The luxuries they maintain are not always clear. Residences tell their own story. A compound sealed off. Diplomats once moved out in a sweep. Renovations justified. Security cited. Soon after, the place glittered at night. Another estate near a quiet lake. A hunting base deep in the woods. A grand hall in the capital for ceremonies. All official. All expensive. Who foots the bill? The line items exist, but the trail is foggy. Planes and cars reflect the same logic. A national airline can lend a jet to the head of state. Motorcades glide through empty avenues. Helicopters skim above fields for inspections that look like rituals. Heirloom tractors for the camera. French cologne in a gold-lit bathroom, a journalist once alleged. Austerity in speeches, abundance in staging. The pitch to the public is constant. Wealth is not mine, he says. It is the nation's. These residences are state property. These cars are state property. These planes are state property. I just use them in the line of duty. That line is the heart of the system. Ownership stays blurred. Use equals power. And power means access. Abroad, the pressure tightened after the protests. After the planes were forced down. After prison doors clanged shut on dissent. Sanctions cut at the obvious arteries. Potash, petroleum products, tobacco logistics. The response shifted routes. Trains rerouted east. Contracts moved to friendlier ports. New shell firms appeared in new jurisdictions, reporters say. Chinese demand cushioned the blow. Middlemen grew fatter. The circle held. Meanwhile, the man in the center played the same role. He scolded managers on television. He sacked a minister for stealing from the people. He hugged babies in factories and skated with his hockey team. He promised order. He promised raises for pensioners, later. He promised dignity for workers, soon. Promises are cheap. Control is dear. Inside the bureaucracy, fear does the paperwork. A tax inspector finds an error. A prosecutor opens a file. An arrest is made at dawn. A company changes owners. Courts agree. A competitor learns humility. A donor appears at a charity gala. The presidential foundation grows. Everyone understands the script. Journalists trace the outlines when they can. They map companies tied to AIDS and their families. They point to mines overseas, managed by friends of friends. They list resorts administered by the property directorate. They log contracts awarded without tenders. Sometimes a trove of emails leaks. Sometimes a disgruntled insider talks. Sometimes the story dies at a border checkpoint. He cultivates an image of modest means. No yacht, he says. No Swiss account, he says. Just potatoes and a puck. But modesty purchases loyalty too. When you control the spigot, you do not need a bank vault with your name on it. You need 1,000 hands cupped up to you. You need them to know who fills and who empties. This is why the question, how rich, misleads. A number would not capture it. The engine is wealth in motion. Discounts taken here, margins kept there, fees shaved, contracts padded, a slush fund disguised as a social program, a state loan forgiven at the right moment, a tax holiday extended in silence. Occasionally, a gust of transparency blows the curtains. An audit surfaces a discrepancy, a tender, clearly tailored, a residence, newly gilded. Then the curtains close. The weather changes. A new narrative replaces the old. The emergency of the day takes the headline. Europe's last strongman, some call him, the last to keep Soviet structures humming, the last to preach stability over reform. He laughs at the label. He points to factories that still operate. He points to fields that still yield. He points to streets that still look orderly. He does not point to the trust accounts or the intermediaries. He does not need to. Because in this design, wealth obeys. It flows to where loyalty is proven. It flees where loyalty cracks. Those who prosper do so by permission. Those who falter do so at risk. The nation becomes a patronage map, a chessboard of favors, debts, and fear. And when the crown wobbles, everyone waits. Everyone calculates. Everyone grabs what they can or offers more to stay safe. The network tightens. The network frays. In the end, the only real number is this: How many people depend on him staying where he is, and how many fortunes vanish